Hello and welcome back to our Twitch channel, or welcome for the first time if you've never joined us before. This is another live stream. We are going to play King's Fall today. I'm Deej, I'll be your host. Allow me to introduce to you the subject matter experts that we've welcomed onto the couch today for a guided tour of one of the most challenging and elaborate and lore-filled and detailed and teamwork-laden, puzzle-strewn activities in Destiny, the King's Fall Raid. I'm joined on the couch by raid designer Brendan Thorne.
Hi, everybody.
Morning. That is Thorne with an E, as much as he likes to tell us that the exotic hand cannon is named after him. That's just not the case,
it's
is
really
it?
Not.
No, although you do damage over time. Bad joke. I'm sorry. I should have let you know I was going to tell that joke before the show.
Right.
And then also on the couch is a member of our writing team, writer Jill Shar.
Hello.
It's awesome to have you both here. Before we introduce our audience to the fire team that will be playing the raid today, because we will be engaged in some developer commentary from the relative safety of these comfy chairs, tell us, how long have you been at Bungie?
I have been at Bungie about 2.5 years now. I started here when we were working on Vault of Glass.
Okay. And talk to us a little bit about the contribution that you made personally to the King's Fall raid.
On King's Fall, I was involved in the Totems encounter, and I built the Daughters fight. And every raid team member, we are actually involved in all the other encounters too. We play test every single day. We give feedback every single day to the other designers. We help each other out, and so we all kind of have our hands in it.
Really important point to make too is that the raid team is involved in creating this activity. There's no one thing at Bungie that happens in a vacuum with just one person doing it, aside from perhaps my sweet tweets. But that really relies on all the sweet art that I can put out on those tweets, so that doesn't even count.
Yeah.
But the raid team, you are speaking for the raid team today. How many? Well, we won't ask that question.
There's a bunch.
There's a bunch.
There's a bunch of people on the raid team,
Yeah.
and we have embedded testers who are going to be playing the raid today.
Okay.
They work very, very closely with us. We can thank them for having a relatively bug-free experience, which is phenomenal.
I think we can make that
so
boast.
pleased with that.
Yeah.
And we work very closely. We have embedded artists that work on the team that architect it and build out the spaces
World
for us.
builders, armor builders, even writers, members of our fiction team.
They work with us, they sit there and they help us develop the fiction as we go to make sure everything's clear and understandable. And we work very closely with a Spec Ops art team who are some of the best artists I've ever worked with.
Okay.
And they build all the cool visuals and effects and spectacles that you see in the raid.
Well, and we'll provide all those shout outs as we moved through the encounters. Jill, talk to us a little bit about yourself. First of all, when did you join Bungie?
I've been at Bungie for a little over a year now. Got here just before House of Wolves.
Okay. And you'll be representing the work done by the writing team to take the puzzles and the encounters in the raid and add to them some fiction, some lore, so that it fits into the world of Destiny and helps tell that story.
Yes, so the raids in particular in Destiny are very design-driven activities. And then during that process of the design, the writing team will come in and look at what's happening, look at the puzzles and the world that's being built. And we like to look at the rules, the mechanics of the raid, of the world of the raid, and say, okay, we're going to look at this as if this is the real reality, and what would be the culture, the stories, the characters of such a world with such realities, right? What would these characters who live there call these things? What would Guardians who come from a very different culture and world call them when they come in and look at them for the first time? So definitely very design driven, and then we let the design be the world and work with the team to describe it.
Cool. All right. Well, with that, let's begin the raid. But before we do that, we're going to meet the brave fire team that we have recruited to infiltrate the taken stronghold. There they are right there. Dead center in the fire team there is team leader Cosmo, your friendly neighborhood community manager. To his left on your screen is Travis Dorsey. And to his right is Chase Christensen. And
Christian.
Chase Christian. That's terrible. He gets to punch me in the face after the show. And then in the Bungie User Research Lab, just on the other side of the studio, we have the other 3 members all dialed in, and they are Dave Petty, Dylan Gaffner, and Brandon Bjarnason. Did I say that name right?
Yeah.
We even checked that before the show because he has a silent J in his name, like another exotic weapon. We just love naming weapons after people in the studio, apparently. Gentlemen, you are going to be playing the normal mode of the raid today. You're all hardcore raiders, so you would be completely capable of doing hard mode. But because this is a guided tour instead of a punishing moment where we have something to prove, you're going to play normal mode. But to sweeten the pot, they've all agreed to the fact that if anybody dies during this raid, they get immediately fired from the company. And if the entire team wipes, we have strike teams positioned outside of their homes to burn those domiciles down to the ground. So tensions are high. We're really hoping for the best. And with that, we'll go for launch. All right, so here we go. Let's talk a little bit about how we put this team together. This is a team of people that you've relied on a great deal to create this encounter. Mm-hmm. These are some of the people that tested the game before we ever put it in the hands of players, yeah?
Yeah, generally when we develop the raid, we can talk a little bit more about how it gets started, but when we start play testing and iterating, the designers work on it, and as we get farther along, we have the testers come in and we have a group of really skilled players at the company that will play it, and we get more pointed feedback from them, and we use them for the tuning process to make sure that it's challenging enough or not too challenging. And so these guys represent some of those people that we have play.
And it's great that these people are embedded with your team. So, instead of being, in another facility or even in another part of the studio, you're, sort of developing this experience hand in hand with these guys. They understand your process. They understand your design goals and the things that you hope to achieve.
So every time we start an encounter, I'm going to be a jerk and just interrupt whoever's talking and say, "New encounter, new encounter,
new encounter."
So this is the first phase of the raid. The whole goal here is to get deeper into the heart of the ship, of the Dreadnaught. And when we started this early on in development, we were trying to open the portal, and players would face back down the hall with the statues, and there were just waves of combatants coming down the hall. And it was okay, but we realized we had this giant space to work with, and it felt like a missed opportunity, like we should be exploring this space. So we ran with that, and we changed it up a little bit, and it turned into an Easter egg hunt. We were looking for those keys that would open the portal. And whenever we develop an encounter, we start with the overall theme of the raid, which in this case is obviously we're trying to kill Oryx and invade his evil cathedral.
Yes.
And then we come up with sort of an experience goal or a statement for every encounter, and that informs all of our design decisions, it informs the mechanics, and it helps guide the writing process. So in this case, we decided that we were going to open the portal by bringing these keys back. And mechanically speaking, we thought it would be fun to try to capture that feeling of running a football through a gauntlet. And the designer that worked on it, Stuart Monsky, he thought it would be fun to interject some humor in here. So we do things like we'll put the phalanxes right next to a bridge, and he placed some of the keys over a pit, so you got to watch your friends plummet to their death. It was supposed to be more low stress, kind of a warm-up encounter to the raid, not to be overly punishing.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be more fun than anything.
And to make them think a little bit about teamwork, because it's not just one person running a football, it's multiple people running a football. They have to time these things together, so it sort of gets their imaginations rooted in the fact that you're going to have to do things together at the same time.
Yeah, we added those force-sealed gates to help enforce the fact that you needed to rely on people. You can't simply break it down with the key. You have to have somebody open it for you.
And Jill, since we don't make a football game, talk to us a little bit about the actual ritual, in the reality that the Guardians understand, as you were talking before.
Yeah.
What's actually happening here in the world of the game?
So right now players are entering the court of Oryx, and the way the court works is that the hive as a culture, their only method of organization is violence. It's just who is the strongest. You become stronger by killing those who are weaker. That's their whole hierarchy, religion, ethos. So Oryx, as the king, needs to be someone who like his door is always open for challengers, essentially. And if he can't defeat the challengers who come to him on a regular basis, then it is right that he would no longer be the king, according to their belief. But
the
he
king
has
is dead,
remained.
long live the king.
Exactly, yeah. So actually, one of the strikes in Taken King involves another character, Alakul the Darkblade, who had tried to challenge Oryx and failed, and saw what happened to him. So the players are.
So he's cool with you invading.
Kinda, yeah, he really is. This encounter, what you're doing with the orbs, kind of, I like to think of it as, I think in medieval times, if knights were open to being challenged in a joust, they would hang their shield outside of their tent, and then other knights could go and bang on the shield to let them know they wanted to have a fight. And so this encounter is kind of like the Guardians going up to Oryx's tent, and they bang on the shield to let them know that they're coming.
Really cool. Actually, before the show, we discovered that Jill majored in medieval studies in college, which is a perfect fit for this sit-down.
Very useful, turns out.
Very useful, especially at this moment, because so many of the themes in The Taken King, I mean, the title itself is very feudal in nature. And in King's Fall, you know, I mean, we're committing regicide here again. And
even the art, it's very, very inspired by medieval architecture, the cathedral inspired the sort of organic wall. Yeah, and then, so then the bubble names that we call the areas are inspired by names in medieval architecture like portico, basilica.
Yeah, yeah. Lots of grand staircases, lots of marble columns.
It's beautiful.
How are you guys doing over there?
They're wired in. They can't hear a word you're saying.
So I can make fun of them?
Yeah, totally. You can totally make fun of them.
Okay, good.
So how much do these encounters change over time? How much of the raid is iteration with, you know, the play testing that happens?
Well, generally when we start, we begin the whole process by sitting down with the game creative director, and in this case, like I said, we knew we were going to be killing Oryx, and it was going to be a trip into the Cathedral of Evil. And then what we do is we come up with themes, like what are some of the through lines in the raid? What are the consistent elements that will inform every encounter and guide the process? And we knew that we wanted the concept of auras to be used really predominantly, coming together, working together. And so auras were a through line. You see that recurring element a lot.
Programming note. So
new phase.
Yeah, new phase. Not only that, this fire team, we tasked them with practicing together to, you know, form up their bonds of teamwork, because no one wants to lose their job because they die in a raid. The threat is very, very real. And so this is why you're not going to see them getting loot today, because they played this together just last night. So they are literally donating their time for your entertainment purpose right now. They're playing the raid for fun, and you're not going to see any loot drops today in this run. So, new encounter. Talk to us about this one.
So this is, we called it internally just platforming, because that's what it was.
Yep.
To sort of answer your previous question about how do we iterate, how much does this change? Sometimes we have a very, very clear picture of what we want. In this case, we knew that we wanted players jumping from cutter to cutter. This awesome platforming puzzle to get through this massive space. And we always knew that we wanted this to be sort of in this hangar bay that would remind you that you are actually aboard this enormous ship in space. And I love the skybox, being able to see out there. And in many cases when we iterate, we'll start off, and sometimes it gets easier over time. Like this particular encounter was cut in half. It was twice as long, but it took so long and it could get frustrating for people. So we reduced it by 50%, and I think it actually turned out pretty satisfying. It also started, there were a lot of false positive ships that would lead to nowhere, so it was more complicated to figure out which route you were supposed to take. And we just discovered that it was more satisfying to have a determined route, and that you could learn and practice and get good at those jumps. And
to not be completely punished,
completely
demoralized. I mean, it wouldn't be a Destiny raid also if you weren't inducing that like palm sweating sense of vertigo. You know, like how many times in the Vault of Glass have I watched people just fall to their deaths again and again and again, and had to literally dry my hands on the pant legs just because, like, I don't like heights that much, and the fact that our video game can create those, you know, similar senses of dread in me is I guess, you know, kind of a testament to the world art. So.
And we also wanted on this encounter to make sure that you couldn't just have one player just sort of carry everyone through. So we added, we're almost there, those plates at the gate.
Okay.
They're brave. They're not running out with swords. No bones of AO. Anyway, so we added those plates in front of the gates to require that you would get at least half your team most of the way through the puzzle before they could progress. We also didn't want a player who just had a really hard time doing the jumps to get stranded and everyone had to sit there and wait for him and get frustrated. So we added those quarantine volumes that would pull people through to the next phase when you advance far enough.
Nice. So Jill, talk to us about the world of the game again. You know, we're here, we see these ships milling about in this space. Not only does this give us a better sense of the enormous scale of the Dreadnaught, but really, what are we looking at here?
Yeah, I think this is an area where the art really speaks for itself. The amazing world artists, environmental artists at Bungie, we get the sense that, I mean, Oryx is an invading force. He's an occupier. He's come to take over our solar system, and we're in his hangar bay full of the ships that he's been sending out. I mean, we've all seen these cutters, arrive on the various planets and unload hive and attack, and now we're the place where they come from. I think it's great, creates this awesome sense of again, like, moving through Oryx's stronghold to get to where he is. We're going through his harbor right now. We're like in the hangar bay of Darth Vader's Star Destroyer, and we're going through where the TIE fighters are.
It's got to be a satisfying feeling, too, for people to see these things in the world of the game and wonder, where do those things come from? I mean, everything in Destiny has a point of origin, or even an origin story. And with the raid, we're able to provide people with such a deeper sense of understanding, the scope of the world and the scale of the story.
Yeah, even as you're playing this puzzle-driven raid, it's still showing you that this is a living world where the hive really do live and conquer and kill here.
So they've reached the gate. Let's see if they're not gonna get loot, because like we said, they did this yesterday as a practice run. There's the secret chest that goes up that left wall. Andrew Hops is the artist that architected this all. I believe he did the ride-along last time.
Yes.
He added a lot of these little secrets where you have to scale up the side. So there's a few of those in the raid. And we were actually really surprised at how fast people, well, no, we weren't surprised. We knew people would discover it all in day one. They figured out just about everything there was, because all of the players are so much smarter than we are.
All of them combined.
Yeah, the collective hive mind.
Yeah, it takes a hive mind to destroy the hive mind.
Well, it really is
Very
cool
meta.
how collaborative Destiny players are. They really are a team of guardians who are sharing knowledge, right? I think that's really cool how the community has bands together and communicates like that.
That's actually one thing that we really enjoy when we formulate the mechanics behind these encounters, is we don't want them to be so inscrutable that you're just banging your head against the wall, like, what are we supposed to do here? Most of the time it's pretty intuitive and obvious. When you combine the writing, the art, the effects, it's pretty intuitive what you're supposed to do, and we're happiest when people figure it out relatively quickly and just practice the execution. But we really feel it's successful when people are debating months down the road, well, what's the best way to do this? What's the most efficient way to do it? And we find new tricks that the raid team never even thought of, and we'll see that later in here.
Just dropping like flies.
Yeah.
Just dropping like flies. Who'd we lose that time? I think it's interesting that this relationship between the designers and the community can be at the same time adversarial and collaborative at the same time. It's like, we want to entertain them. We want to create something that they'll love. We want to confound them and confuse them for maybe just a moment. If they figure it out instantly, if they take a look at it and they say, oh, well, I know what this is. This is easy. This is dumb.
Which is challenging too, because you sort of create this visual language of raid mechanics that people learn. So every subsequent raid becomes a little bit easier to decipher. And so we have to keep upping the bar and figure out new mechanics that we can introduce to confound people and create that new lexicon.
Aha, I know how Bungie thinks now. All right,
new encounter. So this is most people call it Totems, I think. Internally, the working name was Control, both for the bubble that it takes place in, and one of the themes of the encounter was that you had to keep a bunch of plates spinning and keep up this perfect rotation to pass through. And as a side note, so Jill's a writer, she'll come in and give the proper names to everything. We work in code names most of the time. So if you were to see this internally, like this would be Aura_dark for 6 months of development until writing comes in and gives some semblance of order to it.
Well, one of the things that the writing team, the jobs of the writing team is not just to apply flavor to something, right? It's also to, like you just said, to be part of the tool set for players, right? All the words, all the things you see on screen need to not only be within the world of the game as much as possible, but also to be speaking to the mechanics, to be things that people can, they can't be inscrutable and lore jumbo. They have to be loreful, but also communicate that idea. And that was the attempt with the auras of the Weaver and Unraveler, which is a foreshadowing a little bit to the sisters that come later, and also a foreshadowing, a beginning of a design.
Yeah,
tool, right?
we wanted to introduce auras in this encounter and the way they work, since they were one of the through lines and the recurring mechanics of the raid. So this is how we introduced it. We made it required to pass into these rooms and keep the totems from killing everyone. One interesting part of development on this encounter is for a long time I had the combatants coming out of that middle gate attacking the center plate.
Yeah.
And that was really problematic because people would just use Saint 14. They'd create these bubbles and they just trivialize the encounter. And we often think, well, how could players trivialize this, and just what the most efficient way to do this is not very fun. So what we did, we attempted to have the combatants run out to the side rooms, so it gave them a new role. They had to clean it up before they reached the side rooms. And it was an improvement, much for the better.
So just as the players start to learn the mind of Bungie designers, Bungie designers are also studying the players.
Yeah,
trying to anticipate.
We learned a lot of lessons from previous content.
Yeah, okay.
And you'll notice too, the combatants here, we're pretty particular about combatant placement and how we use them. You'll notice all the combatants that come from the center are all melee.
Yes.
And all of the side rooms of the totems are all ranged combatants. So if you were getting killed, you know exactly why you died. You got killed by a thrall, well, the guys in the middle weren't doing their job.
You had one job.
You had one job to kill your ads, and you didn't do it.
That's a classic line.
Yeah,
from
I
our
misspoke.
own playtests.
We do have a ranged combatant. We have the wizards in the middle, and the reason for those are to exist as combat call-outs and to make sort of a cadence to the raid, a pattern that you have to learn.
We talk a lot at Bungie when we make these encounters, when we design these games, we talk a lot about player feedback. And even in the previous encounter, you know, when you think about when those ships are going to appear or when those ships are going to disappear, even if it's just so much as like a lighting effect or sound pip, you know, you give people a little bit of a hint as to what's going to happen in the raid. You give them the cues they need to understand these things. And it's interesting to me that even the way you might name something would also give them some of those cues, some of those little pieces of intel they can use. So if you're feeding them chatter, if you're having people the first time they play through a raid say, oh, we've got the brand of the Unraveler, you know, or we've got the brand of the Weaver, there's a juxtaposition there. There's creating and destroying, which kind of helps them decipher that puzzle. So how does that happen? How does the writing team understand the raid and understand the essential challenge or the experience there and say, oh, I know how we can feed them the breadcrumbs they need to arrive there?
Sure. Well, we play the raid is definitely a part of it, and the story comes from from the gameplay, from what the player needs to do. Whatever the player needs to accomplish is like your heroic journey, the heroic journey the players are going on. So, I mean, it's what becomes the story is not just the writing; it is the sound effects and the art and the combat and everything. I mean, it all, like you said, contributes to this feeling that players are when you play the Kingsfall raid, you're the first Guardians who are facing Oryx. Like with Crota before, and even with Atheon, in Vault of Glass, there were other Guardians who had gone before you and failed, but part of the story is piecing together their
footsteps, right?
Succeeding where they failed. This raid is you're the first humans to do this, and so therefore it makes sense that there's no tour guide saying like, let me explain to you what this is. You have to piece everything together like Indiana Jones style, like detective work a little bit, looking around at these strange sounds and architectures and try to figure out what's happening.
And to your point, in the football encounter, sort of turn Oryx's rituals against him. You know, if Oryx is going to stand on his Dreadnaught and essentially say to the entire Hive race, come at me, bros. You want to be the king, you can come at me, bros. And the Guardians show up and they're like, we love football, we're happy to come at you. So, you know, the fact that you're creating this fictional world where there are these rituals on board the Dreadnaught, there are these ways in which the Hive conduct their caste system or organize their forces, and the Guardians can say, we can play these games too, is pretty interesting.
Yeah, there's an element here, now that all the knights are coming out, on hard mode, we added majors to the mix. And typically we try to avoid just adding more majors to make something hard. If we're going to do it, we like to add it purposefully. Like it's supposed to create a memorable experience. Oh, that's when the major spawns, and there's something that I have to react to. We don't just pepper them throughout to raise it across the bar. That's not as fun as creating an actual moment that has to be responded to. And they're almost done, I think. How many runes you guys have left? They can't hear me.
They can't.
And there we go. Good job.
Good job. Oh, and if you'd been here yesterday, you would have seen such loot. We're just going to keep saying that.
Yeah,
They didn't get any loot. They played last night.
They played last night
If
for
you're
practice.
just joining us in progress, there was this team had to come together and form some fresh bonds of teamwork. There you go.
So
celebrate.
So now we're on to the War Priest, and Jill will tell you guys a little bit about that in a second. This room, the encounter actually started as a symmetrical space. It was like well, not quite an amphitheater, I guess, but there were two sides, and then in the middle, the War Priest was down on this floor. And we realized that with symmetrical spaces like that, it's often difficult to call out where you are and where you're positioned in the space.
Yeah.
And we moved to this more frontal facing, so there's a single front for the players to look at the boss and create asymmetrical play spaces, and each one plays a little bit differently. So we were pretty happy with how that worked out. Chris Manprin worked on this encounter, and one of the stated design goals was to create this tactical experience where this guy you'd have to sort of use his room against him, specifically the monoliths that protect you from the Oversoul. Mm-hmm. Jill, do you want to tell him a little bit about the lore, what's going on here?
Sure, yeah. So keeping with what we talked about earlier, at this point you're still sort of following the Hive rituals as they exist, right? You're going through the process that the Hive have established of how one challenges the king, and so you've met Oryx's War Priest, who's there to test you to see if you are. I mean, before we got into this bubble, you saw the incident string. The War Priest has deemed you worthy.
Yes.
So you come in and he starts testing you, and you have to prove your worth through your combat skills, through your ability to kill. Right. And after this is where we'll start to talk about places where Guardians start to use their light, basically their unique power to start to upend Hive rituals. But here's very much you're playing Oryx's game here. And
this aura that we're using, this is an extension of the aura theme that we touched on. Mm-hmm. We're teaching them to use it in a little bit different way. Previously it was a protective aura, which you'll see get a call back later in the raid. Now it's an offensive aura. And actually when we were first developing this, Gavin Irby, the lead raid designer for Kingsfall, it was called Drowned in Blood, mostly just because he's a Slayer fan.
Well, actually, we one of the reasons that was changed is because as a T-rated game, we actually can't use the word blood in terms of like gore.
Yeah.
If blood appears, it'll you can say it in terms of like your bloodline of your family, etc. But
also one of the design pillars for Destiny, to never be grotesque, to be a bright and hopeful world.
Right,
definitely post-apocalyptic, maybe hideous, in a beautiful way, but
right.
Never nasty.
Right, you're the hero. And then actually the string Brand of the Initiate was something that we agonized over a lot because we're really trying to give that clue of what's happening. How
He's testing you, seeing if you're worthy to pass on.
Yeah, and you have to actively pick up that torch.
Sort of like a chess match,
Yeah.
It's like there's so many different opponents that you confront in a game of chess, and you can't have a game of chess without the bishop. So to think that Oryx has a member of the clergy that he commits to the fight is kind of an extension of that feudal metaphor. So now we're lost inside the castle. Yeah, running through the maze. Any castle has secret passages, has hidden catacombs. So is that sort of the mood that you're looking at?
Yeah, that's what we were going for here. We hid some treasure here, and in the interest of time, we're skipping the puzzle in here, which I think players figured out pretty quickly, which is amazing. This is actually one of my favorite lighting areas in the game. I think the lighting team is fantastic. Like, players just would not recognize the spaces prior to getting the lighting passed on them. It creates a lot of mood and texture to everything the artists do. And I hope that people appreciate how effective it is here. Yeah. And they're just about to start Golgoroth.
Yeah, like previously players had been moving through these very stately crafted cathedral-like areas, right? And now all of a sudden you're in a tunnel that looks kind of like, oh, someone died.
Yeah, somebody died.
Uh-oh. You kind of look like you're off the beaten path a little bit here, and that will speak to what happens in the Golgoroth encounter, where players start to use the light, the reclaimed light, and start smashing stuff in Oryx's cellar.
All right, we're waiting for a straggler to get through the maze.
Dance it off.
Come on. Who is that? Who's that? Cosmo?
I believe we're spectating. Yeah, we were spectating Cosmo and his fabulous dance, and then there we go.
All right, so here we go.
New
On
mission.
to Golgoroth. Designer Joe Blackburn worked on this fight. So Golgoroth, the inspiration was we wanted to fight a giant boss in a tiny little room. And the space is actually pretty huge if you were to look at it objectively, but he sort of dwarfs it. And another thing we wanted the concept of taunting, which is a really familiar mechanic to MMOs if you play those.
Yep.
Good dodge. Oh.
Spoke too soon.
Yeah.
Good dodge. Do a good job. Do a good job.
And some of the things we did on this fight, like the 6 orbs that you bring down, early iterations, they would spawn in random locations, and the taunter sort of had to drag him into position. But we found that randomization could make you get these really unfortunate placements, and it would feel really frustrating if you just didn't get the optimal orb placement. So we moved to a static location for them, so you could sort of plan for that.
It's such a better power fantasy for the players too, to be able to choose your own strategy.
Yeah, and we think it's better when people can learn and craft strategies and have them evolve over time. And we mentioned earlier about players surprising the designers. Internally, when we did this, we did a 6 orb strategy with 2 taunters, one on either side. And it worked fine, and we did it internally. And then players discovered, well, you don't need to do that. We can just do 1 orb at a time. And lo and behold, it was way more efficient. And so that sort of became the de facto way of doing it. And the raid team went, hey, this is easier. So we do it that way now.
Talk to us about these orbs. You were mentioning that Golgoroth is sort of a protector of these orbs, and that he makes sure that they're in a safe place. Why are they so valuable?
Yeah, because the orbs are light. The hive devour light. They consume light to feed the lore of the hive is that they've made a sort of horrible pact with these worm gods, and they have to always be killing to feed their worm gods, or else the hunger will kill them. So the way that Oryx survives is that there's this sort of that system of violence creates this tithing system almost up to him of where the death that his underlings kill, and then the light that they eat gets tithed upwards. So this is Oryx's light cellar almost. This is where light of
Amway warehouse.
Kind of where these are like the spoils of his conquest. He's captured light, and the way that players defeat this encounter is by reclaiming it, by taking connecting that with the power inside themselves.
Using light as a weapon, as Guardians do.
Yes, yeah, that uniquely Guardians can do.
And the combatants here, we did a previous intro of the Acolytes and the Adept here, but that was a new thing we added for King's Fall. We thought it would be interesting to take some existing combatants and add a little variation to them. We thought it would be interesting to have a combatant where you don't always want to kill them because it could backfire on you, and I think they were a pretty successful addition to the raid. And it's always entertaining to me when somebody pops the Adept first and then wrecks the rest of their team. So let's see, what's his health at right now?
He's about, at last glance, he was about 50%.
They're going to drop him. Let's see. Yeah, I can hear him counting over the next room. Go for it. Oh, now they're in the taking phase.
We were joking around about the significant other of a gamer or a Destiny fan. Like we wear headphones. If you're a really polite gamer, you wear headphones so that you don't fill your entire home with the sounds of war. Of course, the unfortunate byproduct of that is your significant other has to hear you saying crazy, insane things when you're alone in your game room.
Yeah. And so my wife is in the other room, and she hears me just going, 15, 14, 13, in this really monotone. She's like, what are you doing? And we're wiping the Golgoroth, jeez.
Yeah, it sounds so fun. There was a time when, I'm not the best player on my team, but I do have a good sense of teamwork, and a lot of times I'll help coordinate my team, and there are times when I'll finish gaming and my wife will say, you sounded really angry when you were talking to your friends. You sounded a little mean.
No, I was having fun.
We were having a great time. We just had an incursion on the left flank, and that needed to be dealt with, baby.
So they almost got it down. And a reminder to any latecomers to the stream, we're not going to see loot because they did this yesterday. It was a practice run. And down he goes.
Down he goes. You were saying before that he dwarfs the space.
Yeah.
Easy to dwarf a space with a boss that big.
Yeah, and when we scale up combatants like that, it's really hard to get a sense of scale once you get right up next to them. Even like Crota, from so far away, he looks kind of small in that space, but when you stand next to him, he's absolutely enormous. And there's actually a considerable amount of work that goes into scaling up a combatant to make sure the animations sync up correctly and everything looks right. You can't just change a field in an editor and suddenly have a 50-foot tall combatant and everything worked fine.
Yeah.
So now we infiltrate deeper into Oryx's stronghold. We can see some changes in the world art design. Talk to me about that.
Well, the directive here was just sort of that you were getting closer to Oryx, and so it was getting more taken-y. Oh, this right here. This is my favorite thing in the transept. That first punch block. Every single time we do it, you take a new person, they come in and they go to the edge, and they marvel at the space before them, and then bam, off to their death. And the inspiration for this, we knew we wanted a traps phase, and everyone on the raid team's a big Dark Souls fan.
Oh boy.
And so we use Sen's Fortress as an inspiration for this phase.
Awesome.
And
Yeah, the name of this bubble is also a medieval architecture themed name, the transept.
Oh no.
Oops.
Oh, he's okay. Oh, he's okay.
Oh, phew. It's an area in a medieval cathedral that is, kind of the middle area, the area, like a transitional area, a transitional space that takes you to where the action is.
yeah, and this was also, we try to pace the raid in a way that we break up the experiences. We'll have a boss, we'll have a puzzle, we'll have this sort of lower, well, I don't know if you'd call this a low stress space, depends on your jumping ability. But like Schadenfreude was one of the stated goals of this space. So so Andrew Hops built this, and like the Court of Oryx that people found eventually, like they were puzzling over it, like there must be some hidden meaning behind it, and no, it really wasn't. It was just this fun thing that Hops thought was hysterical.
The basketball Court of Oryx.
So he came in over the weekend and built it, and we thought it was the greatest thing ever. And it took players like all of a week to find it. And again, if you're a latecomer, they're skipping the chest because just they did it last night for a practice run, so they wouldn't get anything out of it.
Yeah. I have, in the past, referred to our community as seawater. If you want to find out if the hull of your ship is airtight,
They'll figure it out.
drop it in the ocean. If there are any cracks, if there are any nook and crannies, they will fill that space.
Yep.
They will. There's
Yeah.
millions of them. They go in here, and no matter how long we think it'll take them to figure something out, no matter how impossible we think something is, and because of Twitch, because of this platform, we get to watch them in real time. I mean, we've never been more connected to the player at Bungie.
Yeah, it's fantastic when the raid comes out and we're sitting around in the conference rooms watching all the Twitch streams at once and seeing people figure this stuff out for the first time. And we have a TV upstairs where there's 9 people streaming Twitch at once, and we come in the morning, I'm getting my coffee and just seeing what people are up to. It's always fun.
And the first time the King's Fall went live, everyone in the studio all had Twitch open on the monitor. It's not a lot of work getting done, but you could feel the energy in the whole studio. We were all watching, switching between the Twitch streams to the teams competing. And when the first team beat Oryx, a huge cheer went up in the whole Bungie studio. It was really awesome.
Well, and we had 2 dueling streams basically going head to head. Like, we didn't know, which one was going to figure this out first. We actually had a team that was right there at the doorstep of victory, and we'll talk about that at the very end of the raid. In your little horror movie, your slasher movie callback. But
it's actually interesting that we talk about Twitch a lot when we're designing these things. We go, well, how is this going to look on Twitch?
Sure.
And that's actually one of our directives that we use when we design things. Any perspective, any role that a player has, would this be fun to watch on Twitch? And if the person is just staring at a wall, then the role probably needs some work.
Interesting. So you actually have the goal to create a watchable game.
Yeah, it should be entertaining no matter what any of the 6 people are doing. We don't want someone staring at a wall.
Or more than 6, right?
Yeah.
You got the 6 players and all the spectators.
Sure.
Yeah.
So more jumping,
More jumping.
transitioning.
This is the hardest jump puzzle in the game. We can time them.
Is that universally accepted that this one's the hardest jump puzzle?
No, I just suck at it.
Oh, okay.
It takes me forever. I just let them quarantine me out.
Yeah, this one doesn't bother me this much. When I play King's Fall, I can just sort of watch somebody and follow in their footsteps. But little pieces that float in the air that just disappear and wink out of existence. And just like if you fall here, you just have to do it over again. If you fall in the other one, you die, and that's when I start getting the sweaty palms.
Speaking of jump puzzles, so here we are. This is the final bubble of the raid. I built this encounter, and Gavin worked on Oryx, and we talked about it a lot, and we decided that we wanted a shared puzzle.
Yeah.
So the 4 platforms. When I was building these things, we didn't really know what they were going to look like. I just called them ziggurats.
Okay.
And that's what it says in the script.
Yeah.
And so when people would stand on these things, I built this really simple spatial puzzle that's not designed to be terribly complex to figure out. And whenever we do make a puzzle, we try to make it understandable and fairly intuitive. It's the execution that's supposed to be hard, and people can debate about the best way to accomplish it. We don't want something that's just like, I don't even understand what I'm looking at here.
Easy to learn, difficult to master.
Yeah, and this encounter in particular with the daughters is, it's very measured out, and it's paced, and it's memorized, and every single spawn in here is done like clockwork. You were supposed to be able to memorize, okay, there's a death squad in the middle, snipers to the side, back death squads, now we burn. It wasn't designed to be terribly random or chaotic, and in fact, the only really random element is who has to do the jumping.
Talk to us a little bit more about the royal family, if you will, Jill.
Sure. These two, Ironic and Irhalak, are the daughters of Oryx. They're Crota's siblings. So this encounter reminded me of talking about during the development process. I thought about Twinrova from Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, and because in that encounter as well, in that game, in that boss fight, the way that you defeat them is by one is an ice witch and one is a fire witch, and you turn their powers against each other. And this is a similar thing with here. These two, one is the Weaver, and we were looking for things that would seem like the inverse of each other in the writing team, right?
Yeah, and that was difficult. We had to communicate that, like, how do we sell the idea that I need to steal the aura from one to use it against the other?
Right. So this is where that this encounter, the mechanics here, inspired the Weaver Unraveler, and then we sort of in the Grimoire we built that out into the idea that the Hive Oryx has this throne world, and
that's where you are now.
That's where you are now. Yeah, like you in the last story mission, Regicide, you beat Oryx in our physical sort of world dimension, and now you've entered into here. And one of the tasks that the daughters have is to unravel our world and expand Oryx's realm. So they're literally taking over
cool.
on like a metaphysical level, and when you stop them.
Yeah. So right here, one of the things that I've always liked about this fight is that it can go so well on that first round, and then it just all falls apart. You miss it by a few seconds, and then you wipe. I kind of like the ability to say, well, do we burn her and finish her off, or do we let her sit at 10%, play it safe? Of course, then you introduce the possibility of failing the jump puzzle and dying.
Yeah. One of our Form Ninjas is in chat, Lord Ravan, and he's talking about the fact that he personally loved the fact that you tease the notion of auras in a previous encounter and then pay it off in this encounter, so that the raid is an evolving experience. You learn about things along the way that inform the combat.
Yeah, and that was a conscious choice. We try to layer mechanics like that and make them instructive.
Oh, and we're slow walking.
So here we go. This is the... So again, Gavin Irby worked on Oryx. This is his baby. And we started with the idea of how do you kill a god? And we talked about it, and Gavin said something like, shooting him with machine guns doesn't really seem like the right answer.
Yeah.
And Ghostbusters was a big inspiration for this. So
are you a god?
Yeah, we're going to come up with this crazy plan to deal with this god, and we're probably all going to die in the process, but it just might work. And that's where the whole light bombs came from. We're going to use his weapons against him.
Yeah, that's another example. In the lore that came from this encounter was looking at, this is another area where these light bombs, they're a way that Guardians can we can communicate that Guardians are using their light to defeat Oryx. It's not just a contest of machine gun versus Hive God Claw. You're using the light to break the rules of Oryx's world and challenge him in a way he hasn't been challenged before.
And reclaiming that light.
Yes.
Scrubbing that light. Because it doesn't look like light. It's a black mass. It doesn't look happy. When you think of light, you think of a sunrise, or you think of, truth or purity. This does not look like any of those things.
Yeah, that's how powerful Oryx is, and then that's how powerful your light is to reclaim it.
The Spec Ops team did a fantastic job creating these elements. Like when we do this in development, there's a lot of green triangles and red circles that we use to prototype things, and we have no idea what they're going to look like when we're building them. And then we bring in the artists and they play it with us, and we try to say, okay, here's what we're trying to do. This is what we want to communicate. All right, so he just smashed, and we added that because we wanted him to physically touch the space. We didn't want him to just be this big set piece. So we thought it would be cool, and Gavin had him actually lean in and smash the platform, which it's one of my favorite parts of this encounter. So right now they're setting off the bombs every round, I think, just for purposes of giving us time to talk. They could certainly do the 16 bomb strategy, which I think was a great challenge mode. I mean, Gavin knew from day one, yeah, we're going to do 16 bombs. It's going to make this awesome YouTube moment. And interestingly, it's sort of become the de facto way of doing it because it's almost easier. It takes a lot of the randomness out of it. There's fewer chances to screw up.
Yeah, they were saying yesterday, they're like, we could do 16 bomb, but we didn't want the stream to be a bunch of us standing around waiting.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah, thanks, guys. So yeah, a lot of this is for illustration purposes. You know, there were some people in the community that were saying they should do hard mode. They should do hard mode, and we're like, well, you know, what we really want is a guided tour of the raid.
Yeah. So here, you'll notice that there's not a lot of randomness in this fight. Everything is pretty prescriptive, and again, that was intentional. We think that fights actually work a lot better when you can sort of memorize it. And if you remember the first time you do Oryx, it seems completely overwhelming because there's so many moving parts and so many things going on, and you wipe over and over and over again before you even get the relic. And slowly, as you practice it, time sort of slows down, and you can read what's going on around you, and
you understand the routine.
Yeah, that's a good signifier that you've designed it well.
Yeah.
I also think it's interesting all the strats that have evolved dealing with the ogres in here. Like originally when we did this internally, we did something like what they were doing now, but we didn't even use Touch of Malice, so it was significantly more difficult. And things like the no knight strategy evolved, and that's great. We love that players figure out new ways to handle this.
Touch of Malice, speaking of, is another area where design informed story in that it's another area. I talked about the hive worms before, and the process of getting the Touch of Malice, working with Eris, is figuring that out with her. The story team wanted to feel like you and Eris were learning things alongside of each other and discovering together, and ultimately the Touch of Malice, it's a weapon that hurts you as well as heals you, just like the hive, their own powers.
It's interesting you said that. It was actually one of the themes we talked about was sort of the seduction of power, like, and Touch of Malice, it played on that theme really, really well. Like, ooh, this is making me stronger, but if I consume too much, it's going to backfire on us.
Yeah.
There's so many different layers of fiction that are not immediately apparent to the player when they first go through this experience. You know, there are things like in the, it's Books of Sorrow, is it not?
Yes, Books of Sorrow.
So that's a great guide for somebody who's actually sat down and committed to reading all of the cards and really understanding the culture of the hive. It gives them an additional layer of understanding of the world, not something they need to beat the raid. We don't publish a tactical manual or an instruction booklet. It's really all player feedback and problem solving. But it was
Seth Dickinson, one of the writers, he's also a fantasy and sci-fi novelist. He's great. He wrote the Books of Sorrow, informed a lot by, again, the design of the raid and the way that we've developed the hive since D1. He's been here since D1. So it gives us the Books of Sorrow are a look into where Oryx comes from, and who else is around him. Not just Crota and the
So
sisters.
this part, we call it the Thunderdome internally. We added that. We wanted to have this kind of personal experience where Orcs came back down, and it's a callback to the Regicide mission. And so we added that so that everybody would get a chance to participate. And actually, originally, when you were shooting Oryx to interrupt him, we were actually shooting his eye, and it was one person who was doing it, but we felt like we wanted everyone to participate in it, so we changed it to the chest, and I think it actually reads a lot better.
So talk to me about what we call it Thunderdome, which is obviously an old Mad Max reference.
Oh, yeah.
For anybody that hasn't gone back and watched their old Mad Max filmography, I highly recommend it. As a child of the 80s, go watch your old Mad Max. It's not just about spray painting your teeth silver. You got to watch the original movies to truly understand where all those people came from. But Thunderdome is, the idea of sort of an arena. You know, it's a place to go in and spar, and only one victor leaves. In the world of the game, in the Guardian reality, what is the Thunderdome? Like, where did they just go?
Oryx's throne world, a close pocket of Oryx's throne world. He tries to, the feeling that what he's doing is pulling you in to intimidate you, but it also ends up backfiring on him because now you're close enough to attack him.
Yeah. So that is, in essence, his purest form? Is that his final form?
Yeah.
Or his most vulnerable form?
Yeah, and you should probably also note, like a lot of the mechanics that you're seeing in here, there's so much stuff in all of these encounters. We have technical designers that assist us with this. Like Jake Meyer, he did a lot of the heavy lifting and the technical work on this. He was a tremendous help.
Oh, look at that.
And he helped everyone on the team. Like you said, it's a collaborative process.
So Cosmo died. So for everyone in chat, Bungie's going to be needing a new community manager. So if you would like to apply, just go ahead and tweet me your resume. We generally like people who can keep their cool on the internet and who play the game well enough to not die during a stream, which is what he promised me. So moving right along, we're back here in the Thunderdome.
All right, we've nearly completed it. Like the Warlock strategy of sacrificing yourself on hard mode, that's something that I don't think we ever did it internally, and then we sort of realized players figure out, hey, you can just neutralize the slam by doing that. I went, oh, that's amazing. So we started doing it. All right, let's see, last round.
You think? You think they're gonna? Are they gonna bring it home?
I think they're gonna do all right.
When you design a full raid like this, people generally, I mean, we're going to finish this over the course of an hour.
Sure.
These are great players. They rehearsed, together this week. They wanted to put on a nice, clean show. We haven't had any wipes, so their real estate seems, pretty relatively safe. But how long do you mean or intend for a raid to last?
Well, when we start off, we know it's going to take several hours on the first couple attempts, and time is sort of a player resource, and we want people to feel like they're making progress. Like that's one of the ways that you evaluate how you're getting better at the game. And most people, I think, if you're not wipe, you clear this thing in under an hour now, and we're totally happy with that. That's fantastic. We feel it's part of the accomplishment of it. It's being able to speedrun and get this done faster and more efficient. And a lot of these strategies, people say, oh, well, that's cheating, or you're circumnavigating a mechanic. I don't think so. Generally, players will do whatever is most efficient.
Sure.
And they expect that efficient thing will be fun.
There are some people that will do things, they'll challenge themselves.
Sure.
They'll wear blindfolds. They'll do it by themselves.
Sure. And that's awesome.
Crying out loud.
That's fantastic. We love seeing that.
But this
from
is your
players.
weekly loot chase. So there are a lot of people that are like, let's speed run this thing. Let's get through it. Let's do it.
And so we strive to make the mechanics that we envision be the efficient way to do the fight.
Right. Wait, hang on. Here it comes.
Here it comes. Here's the final moment. Come on, somebody pop Ward of Dawn so they rocket him. Come on. And victory.
Yes, we did it. We did it.
Yay!
All right, you redeemed yourself. So I love this moment when he dies. I love what Spec Ops came with here. There's this loud roar and flash of light, and then he just drifts away into silence on the Saturn.
It just becomes
It's just
crystal.
cute. It lasts so long. I love it.
I really want to go down to Saturn and see a skeleton. I hope we do
know.
that someday. And I love this view here. Hopefully they'll pause. You can see the scale of this ship, how enormous it is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Are you
And then, and Jill, you were talking to me about, the fact that because Guardians use light as a weapon, they are able to defeat Oryx.
Yeah.
But
Not quite the way that a Hive would have. Right, so one of the Grimoire cards for the King's Fall raid is a message from Toland the Shattered, who is one of our lore characters, who's a guardian who has devoted himself to studying the Hive for a very long time and has kind of drunk the Kool-Aid a little bit. And and so his observation of your run on the King's Fall raid is he says, oh, you, like, he's kind of shocked. He's like, what have you done? You started off, doing the Hive thing, but then you started smashing the stuff up in the cellar, and you started releasing the light, and then you killed Oryx, but you didn't become the next Taken King. You remained a guardian of light, and that power vacuum is something that we've continued to explore in the updates that have come out since Taken King, with Malok, these other Taken characters, Taken Hive characters who see that power vacuum existing in the Hive, and they want to be the next one at the top.
pretender to the throne.
Yeah, or I mean, if you can get the throne, then you are legitimately the one on the throne, according to the Hive logic. There's no such thing as a pretender to the throne. If you've got the throne, then you were strong enough to be the king.
So Jay Kriske in chat was actually following that story, saying Toland just wants to be the next Taken King. And the Guardians who complete the King's Fall raid, they don't ascend the throne. They move on to go back to the tower and, go into the Crucible and,
They remain warriors of light.
Legend.
Yeah.
And they remain the warriors of light,
They're
leaving
heroes.
the throne open, which enables us to tell other stories like the one we tell about Malak in the April update and stuff like that.
Can I tell them about the next raid?
Absolutely not. But you do still work here, and you are still working with the team upstairs. There's a full raid team creating experiences just like this one. So who knows? Maybe someday. I'm not saying. You're not saying.
We've got some more stuff in store.
Yeah, do you?
We've got some more
Okay,
stuff in
all right.
store.
Well, there will come a day when we'll talk about those things, but it is not this day. This day was all about just enjoying this this raid. Thanks so much to the Brave Fire team who was able to complete the raid in just
job,
under
guys.
an hour. Well done,
Yeah.
everyone. We salute you. And help me out with this again. That was Cosmo. That was Travis Dorsey. That was Chase Christian.
Got it.
And then not on screen, but also brave, was Dylan Gaffner, Dave Petty, and Brandon Bjarnason. So thanks so much for putting on a great show, and thank you, our audience, for enjoying that show.
Thanks for playing.
Yes,
Yeah.
you complete us.
Aw.
And it's been our pleasure to introduce you to these people that create the experiences that we all enjoy together. We'll be back on stream again next week. We'll do something similar to this, but with Crucible maps.
Sweet.
No matter
good.
where you go, no matter what you do, there's people who are working hard behind the scenes, creating amazing places for you to go and discover, and amazing creatures for you to kill, even including each other sometimes. So this has been another Destiny live stream. I'm Deej. It's been my pleasure to host you. And if we don't see you on stream next week, we will see you in the tower or the reef.